Hello everyone, it's Joe again from Scarecrow Joe's studio, and welcome back. This is part 6. Yes, part 6 of the Crop Keeper paper mache tutorial. And as you can see, I have got some more work done on this. So in this segment of the tutorial, I am going to show you how to apply or insert your tree branch arms and hands here into the jack-o'-lantern, and also some other little tips that you're really going to want to pay attention to in this segment of the tutorial. So let me show you how I did this. Alright, so first things first, my pumpkin here is still not completely dry, and you can tell where these darker areas, that's the more wet clay. It's not wet, I mean it's drying, but anyway, although it's not completely dry, it's dry enough for me to handle. And so one of the things that I mentioned in the last segment, in segment 5, was that paper mache clay, once it starts drying, or once it does dry, it does have a tendency to shrink a little bit. That's because of the high water content that's in it. So I've already started layering on some wet clay into those areas that have pulled apart from that thin flexible cardboard. So that's what I'm focusing on right now. I'm going to go ahead and block in with some clay here in those areas that have started to pull apart. And of course I'm going to use my paste here, my paintbrush, to smooth it in, to blend it in, so that it doesn't look like it has a stopping or a starting and a stopping point. So I'm going to continue doing that. There's a few areas I got to smooth this part in, but there's a few other areas that I wanted to show you. These areas right here, you could see that now. In the last video, you probably couldn't see it very well. This is my thin flexible cardboard. These are the pieces where I glued it into the edge of my pumpkin form. I don't want to leave that like that because it's going to look really horrible once I go to paint it. So there are a couple different things that you can do. You could just clay over those areas. Take a little bit of your clay, fill over those areas there, smooth it in with your paste. Now if you're lazy like I am, that's all you're gonna do. You could also, with your clay over the entire inside of the mouth and the eyes. That'll be fine too. And it is something that I do recommend because it's just gonna make it stronger. But anyway, I'm just gonna, for the sake of time constraints and just again trying to get all this done for you, I'm just gonna clay over those areas that have these gaps where you could see that I did glue them on. I'm gonna clay in some of these areas where the clay has dried and started pulling apart, and then in these areas up here where I have any kind of, again, seam inside where my thin flexible cardboard meets those areas, I'm going to put clay in there, here, and just smooth them over. So that's what I'm going to focus on now. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And when I'm done, we're going to work on attaching the arms to the pumpkin form here. Alright, I have all that done and pretty much, smooth over as best as I can get it at this point. One thing to keep in mind is that, in your final piece, if you don't think that the paper mache clay is smooth enough for your liking, the really great thing about paper mache clay is that you could take some sandpaper and you can sand it. You can lightly sand the areas down where maybe it's not as smooth as you like, or maybe there's some stop and go points that you forgot to focus on and it kind of stands out. You could sand those areas down, not a big deal. So that's really cool about paper mache. I'm going to move forward now and I'm going to connect my arms. I have a couple of them here. I think I'm going to use this one's bigger or wider. I think I'm going to use this one for my tree. I have another one sitting that's out in front of a fan drying right now. It wasn't quite dry, so I can't use that one, but I definitely know that that one's going to end up going on the tree. So that leaves me with these two, and this is the final product right here, the final dry product from our work, the work that we did on these in the last segment with the paste and the toilet paper and the cotton. So this is what it looks like, and it has dried very, very hard. Cotton looks good. It's still raised up off of the that toilet paper that I put over it, and I still have not done any kind of clay work or claying over these areas here, and for a good reason. These may be too long. I may have made these too long, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut my holes. If you recall, I did leave an area on both sides of where I want to insert my hands or my arms. One of them is a little bit higher than the other. I did that on purpose, but if you happen to do that on accident, not a big deal. I think it lends it a little bit more character. But anyway, after inserting these, this I can guarantee I'm probably going to have too much. I don't want it to stick out and so that it could be visible from the inside. So I may have to trim it down a little bit. But first things first, I'm going to go ahead and cut the holes. Because I could tell, bring this forward, trying to insert this. Hole is not big enough. So that hole is not big enough, so what I'm going to do is, I got to make that hole bigger. This is just a steak knife here, and I'm just going to cut a little bit more. Just making it a little bit bigger, a little bit at a time. I don't want it too big. I want it to just be able to fit in there. So let's see here. Okay, that fits in there pretty good. But I don't know if you could see, but quite a lot of that wire in there, or that armature, sticks out. One or two things that you could do about this. We do want it to be in there, at least I would say like an inch or so, maybe even 2 inches. So one of the things that you could do is that you could flip it over while the armature is still in there, and you could bend, because it's bendable wire, you can bend it in. So I've bent that wire in. And now, I mean, you could still see it a little bit. I mean, you really have to kind of work at this to position it in the way that you want it to be positioned. But that's what you would need. That's what you would do. You would take that wire and you would bend it, or you can trim it. You can take this out. You can take your wire cutters and you can trim some of that, which is what I'm going to do. There we go. Most of you are probably a lot stronger than I am, so it probably wouldn't have taken you that much effort. But it's okay. So, you know, determine where you want your arm positioned, or how you want your arm positioned. Because we are going to, first of all, we're going to fire up our hot glue gun. So I'm going to leave that hanging there. I'm going to pause for a second, get my hot glue gun fired up, and then I'm going to determine where I want the other hand. Alright, I went ahead and cut my other hole, which actually I didn't have to cut too much more out of, and I trimmed my other arm. The other thing that I did is that I bent, when I say trim my other arm, I trimmed off the excess amount of the bendable wire in there. Now this is the reason why I left that out there and didn't clay over it or do anything with it. So keep that in mind. If you put the clay on there and let it dry and you have to trim, it's going to be even harder to cut through. The other thing that I did was I bent, it was originally bent this way when I inserted it. I bent it this way. And the reason for that is when I insert the arm like that, it's kind of flush. You can't see it, and I realize that, but inside there, it's flush against, or as flush, because it's a round surface, obviously, it's as flush as I'm going to be able to get that in there. Waiting for my hot glue to fire up, and of course I did the same thing to the other side as well. So I got it to the position where I want it, and so that the arms are kind of bent inside there and sort of flush, as flush as I could get it against the inside of that pumpkin surface. Now what we're going to do is one at a time. We are going to first of all hot glue them in place on the outside, and once that glue is held up, you know, and set, we're going to go inside, and that piece that's in there, if you have a big enough opening where you could fit your hand in there, and when I create, that's the other thing, when I create my jack-o'-lanterns, the bottom hole, if it's a hollow jack-o'-lantern, obviously, I want to make sure that I can have enough room to insert my entire hand in there. For many, many reasons. I clay over now, I don't know if you could see that, but inside there, where I inserted my pumpkin stem, I clayed inside there around where I inserted. And so my intention is to do the same thing with these arms. Once they're inserted, hot glued into place temporarily, then I'm going to go inside of it, and I'm going to put my paper mache clay all around in that area. That's going to also ensure that once that dries, it's going to be very, very solid inside there. Alright, as you can see, I have hot glued one of my arms into the position that I want it to be in, and I did a lot of hot glue all the way around there, plenty of hot glue, so that I know it's not going to go anywhere. It will hold that, you know, temporarily until I could get that clay in there. Once the clay is around there, it'll hold that in there permanently. This is going to take a little bit of time because you're going to have to hold, obviously you're going to have to hold the arm in the position that you want it, while making sure that on the inside you're kind of pressing it like this forward so that it's kind of flush on the inside. And then once this is, the hot glue on this is set up and cooled and dry, I'm going to go in on the inside, and I'm going to do the same thing with my hot glue. I'm going to put hot glue around the arm armature that I bent in to make it semi-flush, or as flush as I can get it, so it'll hold that in place as well. Alright, so that one's completely set with the hot glue. The hot glue is cool, and I squirted the inside of it as well. You probably cannot see, or maybe you can, I don't know. I'm trying to show you right in there. But anyway, my full-size hot glue gun, I couldn't get the whole thing in there. So what I ended up doing was tilting it and just like squirting in the hot glue into that area, and it worked fine. If you have a miniature hot glue gun, that's going to work better to kind of get that inside there. But if you don't, it's completely unnecessary. You could just do what I did. I just turned it, squirted it in there, and just kind of let it fall into that area where I wanted it. Alright, so there you have it. I have both of my arms glued in. Next step is I'm going to take some of my paper mache clay, and I'm going to go in on the inside. And on the inside here where my arms are inserted, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clay over. So right over those areas, the entire armature that has been inserted in there, you want to clay over with some paper mache clay. Really get enough clay in there and around it. That's once it dries, it's going to help keep that in place. I'm not worried so much about smoothing that over on the inside of it. What I can do though, because it's going to be hard to get a paintbrush in there, you just take some of my paste on my hand and kind of press it down. But you do want to make sure that you have clay all around on the inside of that armature and pressed down so that it stays in place. And once it dries again, it'll be very hardened and more secure. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. Alright, so I've got my clay all the way around on the inside there. One thing I do recommend, guys, is that before you attach the arms, do make sure that your pumpkin form, your clay work, is completely dry. Wait till it's completely dry. That's what I would normally do if I weren't taping a tutorial. I would make sure that my armature or my art is completely dry before I went forward in attaching the arms. But again, time constraints. So I'm moving forward here just to get this done and get it out of the way. So I'm ready to move on at this point. And I'm going to start covering in those areas here. And one of the things that I like to do with any kind of like tree type art is you don't really have to completely blend in around this armature. You could leave a buildup of it around it so that it looks like it's kind of growing out of a knot, if that makes any kind of sense, like a tree branch or tree trunk knot. But you do want to make sure, for one thing, you do absolutely want to make sure that you're getting your paper mache clay all the way around your armature on the outside. Okay, there's the one side. I'm going to do the same with this side over here. I have this big glob of glue that kind of pooled there, so I'm just taking my scissors and I'm trimming around all that excess hot glue. I don't need that in there. Alright, and just the same, going in with my paper mache clay. I'm going to build up a nice sort of a knot, tree knot, all the while making sure that I get clay all the way around the arm. You want to make sure you get enough of it around the arm. Don't just put like this thin little layer. You want it to be thick, because you want this to be very sturdy so that it doesn't end up falling off. If you do this process correctly, you should not have any issues with that whatsoever. So once again, with my paste, I'm going to go in and smooth it out. Okay, wanted to give you a good look at this. I have smoothed it over using my paste and a paintbrush. And then after that, I went in with my little sculpting tool. You can also use a spoon, something like that. And I smoothed it in even more. I did it on both sides. And I paid particular attention to any kind of stop and starting points that may come through after this is dry. You don't have to get too crazy on the smoothing or anything like that. Leave it textured because it's part of a tree, right? So this is going to make it look more like it belongs on this jack-o'-lantern. instead of just two arms with some hands stuck on him. It's going to just look more cohesive, especially when he sits on top of that tree. So I'm at a point right now that I absolutely cannot do any more work on this guy until he is completely dry. And once that happens, I can go in and I'm going to add in more texture and some vines and those types of things around these areas in particular. Maybe some coming up or off of the stem up here, using my cotton, using that cotton technique and building those areas up just to give it a little bit more detail, a lot more definition, and a lot more interest to this piece. All right, so I hope that you found that information useful, and that you are able to apply that information not only on this project here, on this sculpt or this prop, but you'll be able to use these different ideas and these techniques and applying them into some other things that you might have ideas on working on. Like I said, I can't do anything else on this until he is completely dry, and then I can move forward in applying some of the other details using that cotton with some vines. All right, it's been a couple of days, and both of my my other tree hands and arms here are completely dry. So I'm ready to attach these to my tree trunk. This guy is pretty much, he's just about completely dry as well. I mean, he probably needs another, I'd say 24 hours or so before these arms, the clay around the arms are completely dry. And then of course the clay on the inside of the jack-o'-lantern where I inserted the arms it's still a little wet in there too, but not a big deal. It's dry enough for me to continue on. But first things first, let's get to this tree here. Time to insert the arms. I'm going to insert that shorter one in there and insert this longer one in there. So I'm going to take my marker and I'm just going to make a little mark on each side here. And I'm going to go back with my my steak knife and I'm going to go ahead and cut some holes in there. All right, I cut my holes. These aren't permanently, or I haven't hot glued them into place yet. Just kind of looking at it, looking at kind of how it looks here. I like this position. So obviously before you hot glue these in, make sure they're in the position that you would like them to be in. Because you have that bendable wire in there and you have it clayed over, you know, that last piece that you're going to insert into the tree. You do have some wiggle room on positioning because you can straighten them, you can bend them. I kind of like that. I kind of like that with the kind of the claw up and then this one kind of down. If you recall, we stuffed this thing with crumbled up newspaper. And obviously, we're not going to be able to clay over on the inside of where we insert our arms. And that's fine. But you're going to need some room in there. So what I do is I take my steak knife or whatever blade you're using, and I just kind of press in, get some of that crumbled up newspaper out of the way so I can insert my arm deep enough. So, you know, I did that on both sides. My hot glue gun is getting fired up right now. And I'm going to start gluing. Gonna make sure I get hot glue all the way around. And yeah, it's going to drip some, but that's okay. I really don't feel like I need to hold it in place because I like the placement of it. You may need to hold yours in place. Make any final adjustments now. You know, if it has shifted on you, if it has moved, or if you decide that, yeah, I don't know, I want to move them a little bit. Also, put your jack-o'-lantern on top. So that is basically the front, or what will be the front. So I made a slight adjustment there. I like it better that way, instead of pointing down more or pointing in towards the tree. I think that's going to look pretty cool. And because now I have displaced some of that hot glue, I'm going to go in and just squirt a little bit more in there. I'm going to let that cool a few more minutes, and then I'm going to go in and do the exact same thing that I did with my arms for my jack-o'-lantern here. I'm just going to clay over, make kind of a knot, and clay over. Make sure that you're getting a good amount of clay in there, at least, you know, I'd say an inch. You can even bulk it up even more to 2 inches around that area, but make sure you're getting all of it. Okay, so I applied probably an inch to an inch and a half, I would say, around the arms here. I bulked them up. And then, of course, I went in after that, smoothed it over with some paste and a paintbrush. And then I took my pencil and I pressed in some more of that wood grain texture so it looks cohesive. Did the same thing on this other side. So these are good to go. I'm going to switch gears real quick here. And I'm going to go back to my, my jack-o'-lantern. Alright, so he's pretty much done. Except I do want to add a few more details in there using my cotton and putting in some vines, especially around like these areas, just to lend it, again, a little bit more interest and more detail. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to brush on. As you can see, I'm brushing on some of my paste, and then just taking pieces of my cotton and kind of just laying it on any areas that I want. I'm probably going to do some up here too, off of the stem, to make that a little bit more interesting. And again, you're going to need probably a smaller paintbrush for this if you're using this technique. You want to make sure that you're saturating your cotton with the paste, but also you don't want to like smash it down, because you want it to kind of stay raised up above the surface of the pumpkin here. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just gonna go in and keep doing this. I did more in-depth kind of tutorial and explaining how to do this in one of the previous Crop Keeper videos. If you've forgotten this method, go back and look at that, and that'll help you out. And then you could take, again, you can kind of form and shape using the end of your paintbrush. So I'm going to continue on. I'm going to build up some more detail here. I'm not going to do it on camera, but once I'm done, I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, just want to show you how this looks. I did bring in some of those vine kind of tendrils up here onto the stem. I didn't get crazy with it, you know, I just put a few in here and there. There's the back. But I did, you know, kind of try to blend it in. So my edges up here with the cotton, I did press those in so that it's flatter onto that surface, and left the rest of it raised. Did the same thing down here. I'm happy with that. I like the way that looks. And then, you know, I did the same thing here on the arms. I brought the cotton down into the arm and laid it over. Same as the other side here. Again, I didn't get too crazy with it, but you could do as much of that as you want. And then I began laying in some of those same vine tendrils here, coming down into the arm of my tree and over that wet clay. Yes, you can apply that to wet clay. My personal preference is to use this technique and apply it over dry clay or clay that's dry enough, just because you have a harder surface for one, and then I'm gonna have to go back in and reform or press in my lines in there. Not a big deal, but again, I didn't get too crazy with it. I did a little bit on that side. I haven't touched this side yet, but I'll get to that off camera. But just wanted to show you that. Really cool technique. It's a little bit time consuming, but I think it's worth the time because it just adds another element of texture to your piece other than just the clay. Alright guys, well that's going to be a wrap for this segment of the tutorial. I'm going to put this in front of a fan and let it dry completely for days, probably up to a week. I don't want to have any wet spots or soft spots before I start painting, and that's going to be in the next segment, the final segment of this tutorial. If you have been following along and you've gotten this far, do the same thing. Put it in front of fans. It's going to aid that drying process. It'll speed it up and ensure that it does get completely dry and solid. So that's going to be a wrap for this segment. Coming up soon is going to be the last segment on painting. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.